Well, good afternoon. Thank everyone for coming today. A couple of things about what we're announcing. You know, each year before the legislative session, we always try and everyone has different crime packages, different things we're working on. And I want to take everyone back, I think, a couple of places before we dive into the meat and potatoes here. Number one is, recall we announced our policy agenda from the Metro Crime Initiative back in early December. We're happy to speak to that a little bit. This is the other side of that coin. These are the financial investments in crime fighting asks that we're going to be asking for up at the legislature that have resulted out of the hard work of everyone involved in the Metro Crime Initiative, or the MCI for short. Now, by way of background, as a reminder, we started the Metro Crime Initiative last year, and it has some basic tenets. The number one tenet is that we gathered together every individual and entity who is involved in crime fighting in the metro area. And we said, let's all talk about our specific challenge and then support each other in solving that specific challenge. So the idea and the acknowledgement is that fundamentally the criminal justice system in the metro area is broken. That is still true, and we know that. The challenge is, it is systematic. It occurs at every step, from preventing crime in the first place, all the way back into addiction and poverty, but also all the way in terms of how we can do arrests, when we can do arrests, how we investigate, to how we prosecute, to the number of staff members at the jail, to the DA's office, and to the number of judges we have and paralegals we have, and everything in between. That's what we mean by the criminal justice system in the metro area. So what we're here to do is to support each other in our initiatives to fix our slice of the criminal justice system. That's what the Metro Crime Initiative is all about. The second aspect of this is we decided that we were only going to talk about, in this context, specific things that we can change. So we're not here to get into philosophical debates or theories about crime. The idea is that everything in the Metro Crime Initiative, and we have a summary available now like we did last year, everything in here is a yes or no. You are either voting for it or you're voting against it. We are either going to have these done by the end of the session or we're not. For better or worse, this has ultimate binary accountability. These are either done or they're not. And you'll recall about last year, we had about a 50% hit rate, which is pretty good. And some of the things that we did last year have literally saved lives this year. Whether it was what we did with ankle monitoring and tracking, whether it was the funding we got to retain and recruit officers, whether it was the CHOP Shop bill and other initiatives that were passed, these have helped. And so we know the Metro Crime Initiative was very successful in a 30-day session, and we're hopeful it will be in a 60-day as well. Now, lastly, in terms of background, the Metro Crime Initiative includes legislators. It includes, again, every office and every elected official that is involved. It doesn't mean they participate in every single meeting on every single issue, but it is an open door for any entity, and that's how it always has been. And what we're sharing today is the initiatives that the folks who've been working on this, what we want to see, what we hope in the upcoming legislative session we can do to make Albuquerque and the metro area safer. And fortunately, we've got a wonderful new sheriff who is on board with this. We've got a wonderful new DA who is as well. And of course, we're going to hear from the Albuquerque Police Department on aspects of this as well. So let's touch on, I think, a couple of things. By far, the biggest conclusion of the Metro Crime Initiative has been this issue with the warrant backlog. So just to summarize, and I'm going to use round numbers, but we've sent out the exact ones. Right now, today in Albuquerque, there are 5,000 outstanding felony warrants. Think about that. 5,000 people who should be in custody who are not, for extremely dangerous crime. There are also 60,000, that is more than 10% of the population of Albuquerque, 60,000 outstanding misdemeanor warrants. This is the most short-term, obvious challenge that will make a difference in the future. So with this challenge comes our, by far and away, lowest hanging fruit, best opportunity. If you ask any law enforcement person in Albuquerque now, what is the number one thing we could do in the next month to reduce crime? It is get those warrants served. And that's what we're asking the legislature to help us with. Why does that backlog exist? There are lots of reasons. But first and foremost, it's a resource gap because we don't have enough officers or enough US Marshals or anything in between. That resource gap is what we're asking the legislature, the governor, and everyone who's up in Santa Fe to help us with. We need $5 million, which is a very low ask given the amount of money available, in overtime funds so that we can serve felony warrants and get rid of this felony warrant backlog. And we can do this in months, not years, if we get this funding. The idea comes from what we've done downtown with our team program with overtime, and it also comes from different programs that we've run with respect to different times of year when we've really focused on warrants. So we know we can do this. It's just a question of officer power and officer resources, and that's where the state can really help. So this is analogous to the fund they put together for officer recruiting. This year we want it for our warrant serving task force. So we also know this is a statewide problem in New Mexico, and so the idea is roughly $5 million for the metro and $5 million for the rest of the state, but again, we'll let the rest of the state sort of articulate their needs. We're just here to talk about the metro area. So we believe this is the number one way and the fastest way that we can make this city safer in months, not years, and we desperately need the legislature to act on this in the upcoming session. So we're going to hear more about this from our law enforcement partners, but I do want to touch on some of the other aspects of the Metro Crime Initiative that we need. The biggest one is where you are right now. So the last time we were all here, including the media, was the day after COVID was announced. This is our Emergency Operations Center out on the west side. This was set up for that purpose. And of course, we all know like a month later, we realized we shouldn't be in the same room together. And we never used this facility really again. So we also know that our old real-time crime center, which you've all been to in APD, has been outdated and far too small to serve the entire metro. So now we have moved, welcome to the new real-time crime center in the metro area. And you see out there a desk available for every law enforcement professional and organization and agency in our metro area can now be here with us fighting crime. From the US Marshal to the Sheriff to the DA's office, this is now available to the entire community. And thank you to the legislature for funding this move. So this is the result of our victories last session in the Metro Crime Initiative. And so now we are set up to fight crime together, literally. And so this aspect that you see, the aspects of this about coordinating technology and arrests is also one major reason why we have such a high arrest rate this year for homicides. It's because of what the legislature and what the city council and the county commission did to support this effort last year. So I think we can see the fruits of everyone's efforts and their investments right here all around you in our new real-time crime center that, again, is truly meant to be for the metro area, which it always was, but could never have been in its old format in APD Maine. So with that, I also want to share tiny asks that are just Albuquerque specific. We do want to build a new, essentially, public safety center in the southwest of town. We've purchased land to do that. We'll be talking about that in more detail. We're asking for $10 million for a southwest public safety center. In southwest, by the way, for those of you, this is sort of Coors and Rio Bravo area in terms of what we're talking about in the southwest. We also know, we're going to be talking about this in the future, we're looking at creating a new area command in the university area. And so we need a facility there and funds for that facility. And then we also have to finish this build out. So we need about $3 million to finish a metro area real-time crime center. And then lastly, too, for special operations, there's a lot of interest to have a centralized, it's for the entire state, every law enforcement and fire department in the state to use a training facility in Albuquerque. And we are asking for $20 million to do that at Coronado Park. So we're going to take questions after, as we said, on this. You heard Rebecca's announcement about the other issues that we're dealing with, which we can talk about, again, separately. But what I want to do now is create some space for some of the leaders in our community fighting crime who are also keenly interested in how the legislature can help us literally make our streets safer in the upcoming months. So let's begin with our Chief of Police, Harold Medina. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everybody, for being here. Our request to the legislature has one thing in common. They are all geared around making Albuquerque a safer place to live. We know the concerns of our citizens. We hear it every day. And we're talking about making some changes and doing some things that should have been done a long time ago. The warrant backlog is nothing new. I spent my first 14 years on patrol for the vast majority of it on Graveyard. And I can't tell you how many times I took a felony offender into custody sat them in the back seat of my car, ran their information on my computer only to hear dispatch say, PD, are you 10-4 officer that individual has a warrant that you just ran? So many times we take individuals into custody in the field only to find that they should have already been in jail to begin with, that they had that felony warrant. Sometimes the media has seen the releases where an individual had multiple felony warrants. One of the easiest ways for us to reduce crime and get some key people into custody is to get these warrants served. When I was in property crimes in 2009, 2010, we had extremely low crime rates in property crimes. And one thing I told detectives is it's about even putting an individual into jail for a short period of time. Because every single week that they're in jail, that is 20 less robberies. That is 10 less stolen cars. And we have to go back to the basics, and we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep the right people in jail. We understand from experience that the entire county benefits from lower crime rates, and I want to thank the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department for being here. We're starting this new administration off strong with good communication, and with help from our legislatures, we can ensure that APD and BCSO has all the funding it needs to really develop into a one metro area philosophy where we're all working together to make Bernalillo County safe. The real-time crime center, as Mayor mentioned, we've moved it out to the west side. It's become much more robust than it was when we first started, and we've invested a lot of money. $70 million have been invested into the real-time crime center and technology in the metro area. They're more crucial as, for a variety of reasons, the courts, they expect much more technology in our cases. Everybody in the media who reads our warrants realize they're focused around cell phones, they're focused around video, they're focused around license plate readers, and that's what we want to continue to do. But we also know that every time we get a civilian into the real-time crime center and they're able to get all this background information, it frees up our officers and detectives to do work that our sworn officers need to do, and it streamlines the process for our sworn officers to make work easier. It's about working smarter. It's about leveraging resources, making sure that we have everything we need to continue to push forward, and ensuring that we truly do more with less. And I think as we look in the past year, the increase in homicide clearance rates, the decrease in automobile fatal accidents, this is all proving that we could do more with less if we push harder and we bring resources in to help our sworn officers. The digital intelligence team, how many times do we see that in a warrant that they were able to produce key information that led to the approval of an arrest warrant and eventually the arrest of a suspect in a major case? A lot of that happens right here in the real-time crime center. We have working on direct feeds. Our air support unit can now directly feed into the real-time crime center. Our next big step, our next big funding hope is how do we get direct feed from our on-body cameras into the real-time crime center so people could make real-time decisions and we could know exactly what's happening, what our officers are going through, and how we could start them more resources without them having to ask. The unit has the capability to track violent offenders through license plate readers. License plate readers are no longer just about recovering a stolen car. Many times we are using license plate readers to say that during the time of a homicide or a shooting, that vehicle was in that vicinity, and that license plate reader is proving it for us. 6,000 cameras. Time and time again, we are finding people on video. Look at some of our major cases. We had an unfortunate incident of a young child killed at a crosswalk. We've talked about how that for the first time was a situation where we were able to backtrack a vehicle through the city to find where it entered the roadway. That prosecution and so much of that case is based upon the video technology and the advancements of the Real-Time Crime Center and the investment by the state legislature, the city council, and everybody else into the Real-Time Crime Center. We want to grow that to the metro area. Every law enforcement area in the metro area should have that benefit. Finally, we have access at the Real-Time Crime Center to APS cameras. Our kids are our priority. We have to keep our kids safe in the schools. We have to do everything to ensure their safety and make parents feel comfortable that we will have access to those cameras. Those cameras have become more important than ever in the recent trend of schools being swatted. We've had more false alarms at schools. We've had to change our tactics. It's no longer about marching in and securing a school and disrupting the whole school day. Because of this technology and the changes, we're now able to see, is it a credible threat, and are we endangering our kids more and disrupting and creating fear in our educational system and them being there by us marching into the schools. And we've modified our tactics because of the technology that we have. The RTC can directly communicate, like I talked about, with air support and get real-time information to our officers on the street and make sure that we're running and getting a background on addresses or anywhere that our air support unit is or units are looking for. All these technology advances have been possible because of the investment from a lot of entities into the Real-Time Crime Center. Let's make this a place where all of the metro area can benefit. Let's fill every one of those seats with Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, the University of New Mexico Police Department, and let's start working as one law enforcement agency with one common goal: make this metro area safe for every single member of our families, your families, and any other people that we know, care for, and love in this metro area. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief. And now we want to invite some of our partners who have started off in a wonderfully collaborative way, working with our Albuquerque Police Department and also our policy team. I do just want to mention and thank some folks who've been part of the Metro Crime Initiative. Of course, Damon Martinez, as you know, heads this up on the civilian side over at APD for the police department and for the city of Albuquerque. Deputy Chief Barker is the lead primarily on the policy law enforcement aspect, and Deputy Chief Griego, who's right here, this is his facility, is in charge of all the capital and technology asks. And also our associate CAO, a long-timer, Bob White, is actually quarterbacks all of this for me in the mayor's office. So thank you to them. Now let's hear from our new sheriff. Wonderful to be reunited with BCSO and have a fresh perspective, and one that is very interested in working with us on this warrant backlog, Chief Sheriff John Allen.
Thank you so much for everybody for being here. As you can see, once again, collaboration and making sure we're a unified front. The Metro Crime Initiative door has been open, and the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office is happy to walk through that door with our partners to make sure the bottom line for everybody in our whole community is to make our community safe. As you look around this facility, thank you so much, Mayor and Chief and our federal partners. Technology is key for, say, battling crime. We have to evolve not only as departments and do it together, but we have seen around the world, and specifically we're asking for funding for more technology and funding for overtime. As we've heard, the criminals on the street, 5,000 felony warrants and over 62,000 misdemeanor warrants. We don't want to be victimized by crime in our community anymore or re-victimized. It is very important to have deputies and officers and other people in law enforcement entities to be working together to get these people off the streets. We've said it time and time again. We have long-term goals, but the community is looking for us to have short-term goals, and what is the result for them to be safer when they wake up in the morning. And as you're looking around the room, this is the way to do it. And the first one is communication, again, collaboration, and once again, technology. We have to keep adding, we have to keep advancing, we have to expand our departments, and we need more people in both departments so we can serve and get all of these warrants off the street. That is very important also, not to reinvent the wheel, but to have our people, our men and women of all law enforcement, to have more people on the streets and be proactive, and to make sure we're preventing crime, and know that crime we're not preventing, making sure that we're following through and making sure all the way through adjudication that we're putting those people in jail and they face the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system is broke, but we're fixing it. It's 5 days in office for me, and we're already starting and we're going strong. And whatever problem we have, it's not to complain about it, it's to have a solution, and this is one way to start it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Now, we do have a couple of legislators in attendance, so we appreciate them coming. Representative-elect Cynthia Borrego, no stranger, former city councilor, was part of our last Metro Crime Initiative. And I think we also have Representative Bill Ream here as well. So we know that, you know, it goes without saying that it's all about partnership in this. What we're pairing that with is funding. But one entity in particular in the last few years that has stood with us in some of our toughest challenges and is, of course, fundamentally responsible for warrants arrests at the federal level is our US Marshal. And so let's welcome Sonya Chavez. Marshal.
Good afternoon. We're extremely proud to be here as the federal partner recommitting to this important initiative here in Albuquerque in the metro area. So on behalf of US Marshal Service, I would like to recommit to the city of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, and the metro area to continue to provide the very unique resources and talent that we have at the Marshal Service to this incredible initiative. Finding federal and state local felons is our business, and we do it really well. And I'm bragging on the deputies and the wonderful staff that work every day at great sacrifice to do this. We do it, of course, in cooperation with these incredible agencies right here and many others. We wouldn't be successful without them. Last year, we cleared 1,400 felony warrants. That number climbs every single year. Again, we do that in collaboration with our partners. So we look forward to adding new life to this initiative here. This is something that we do every single day at the Marshal Service. But it gives me great excitement and great pride to see the energy going into this new year, this recommitment to making our community safer. And the mayor is right in terms of prioritizing how we're going to address violent crime. This is something that we can do right away. It's not easy. It's methodical, but we've done it and we do it, and I look forward to it. There are a few steps that we will take together to make sure that we're prioritizing these cases and going after those who are most detrimental to our communities. I know that we all agree on that as a philosophy moving forward. So we also can bring some overtime to the table, so I don't want to dip into the $5 million, but that's one of the promises that we are able to make constantly to our partners, is to bring overtime to their officers so that we can initiate some special operations and target certain areas and fill certain gaps. So you have our commitment, Mr. Mayor, Chief, Sheriff, and Mr. DA. From the Marshal Service to bring the incredible resources that we have to offer to the table, and we look forward to all that we can accomplish, I'm sure, in a pretty short time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and want to highlight a little bit about what she mentioned in terms of who's also been a part of this and aware of this, right? We have communicated these numbers to the court system, to LFC, and to the leadership in both chambers. And of course, we always work very closely with the governor's office. So they've been aware of these challenges. And so now what we're proposing is a way to actually deal with it. And part of that is also understanding, look, if we're going to start serving all these warrants, you know, what happens next? And so I'm sure some of you are going to ask about that. And that's where we also support these resources for the entities that have to deal with these issues next in line. So this could be funding for the DA's office for additional prosecutors or contracted prosecutors. This could be for, even parole and everyone in between. And that's what we're going to work with the legislature and our other partners on, is understanding how can we fully fund the system to make sure that we serve these warrants so that they're not right back out. But I will tell you this, if we get this funding, if they're right back out, we're going to go serve them again. Because this is the single best way we can keep our community safer in the short term. And with this funding, we're going to be able to do it, in part because we've got a partner in the DA's office. So let's hear from our new DA, Sam Bregman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Chief. I have to tell you, this facility is amazing. The technology is just fantastic, and it does help. The technology that this building has helped and will continue to help in the prosecution of crime. And we're very grateful to the expenditures and the emphasis you've put on making this work. And thank you, both of you. Obviously, our office is 100% supportive of going after these people with warrants. Obviously, there's too many felony warrants out there right now. And I know that the partnership between the Albuquerque Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, and Sheriff, I do want to say, I know you've only been in office for a few days, but I've been here less. But I do know one thing, the commitment to make a difference, an immediate difference in crime is there, and the mayor and everyone that has spoken is exactly right in what it's going to take. The immediate effect of dealing with this warrant backlog will have a profound effect on crime in this city. And I know the governor's office supports this kind of thing. I know the legislature will hopefully support this kind of thing. I know there's a lot of talk about all the money up there, but I cannot imagine something more important for the city of Albuquerque and the county of Bernalillo than to spend the necessary resources on dealing with this warrant backlog. And I got to tell you, going after violent offenders who don't care about the criminal justice system, about the rule of law, about a judge's order is unacceptable. They don't care. They're gonna start caring. When these guys, these police officers, these deputies, these fine US Marshals, and let me tell you, I said it the other day, and I really mean it because I know a lot of them. The United States Marshal Agency is the best agency in the world at capturing fugitives. And I know we are going to rely on Marshal, on your expertise and your agency's expertise, and I can't wait to work with everybody involved here on rounding up people who commit a violent felony with a gun or otherwise, and will walk in front of a judge and say, I'll be back. I'll be back to court when you tell me I have to be back, and then they're in the wind, and they give the judicial system and that court order the middle finger. It's unacceptable. And I got to tell you, we're gonna make sure we do everything possible at the district attorney's office to not let them get away with that and make sure they show up for court. And one of the unique perspectives that the district attorney's office has in its prosecution role is that obviously we work with the court system every single day. And I look forward to working with the judges and making sure they understand one thing off the bat. We're here to get the people that ignore your orders when it comes to these warrant backlog. We're here to help you bring them back to make sure that they stand and answer for whatever they're being charged with. That's just common sense. I think every judge there wants people to do as they're ordered to do. So I can't wait to have that perspective to be able to bring it to the judicial system, as well as the relationship the district attorney's office, of course, has with law enforcement. And putting those things together, my advice would be if you have a warrant right now out there in the community of Albuquerque, go turn yourself in and save yourself some time. Because I know the legislature, I know the governor, I know everyone in this room is committed to making this happen. And this, I believe, and I'll say this the last time and then I'll end, this is the one thing that can have an immediate effect on crime, on what's going on in this city, an immediate effect. So I will obviously be at the legislature supporting the mayor's initiatives and doing the best I can to explain the reasons why to the legislature. So thank you.
All right, so we're going to wrap things up with a couple of points. Number one, I want to remind everyone, our focus is dangerous individuals on our street who should not be on our street. Those are felony warrants. And as the US Marshal said, and as the DA, they'll categorize and prioritize exactly who that is and what level of felony that is associated with. I do want to mention, because I also feel like someone's going to ask, what about the 60,000 misdemeanor warrants? Look, we got to take care of the felony dangerous warrants. That we all agree on. We'll see what happens next, but I will tell you this. There are probably certain categories of misdemeanor warrants that we may go after. And the categories are ones where there are not laws on the books that can adequately make them felony warrants. So I'll give you one example, retail crime. If you've got 12 misdemeanor charges for shoplifting, we're probably going to go serve that warrant because we know you're the person who is just stealing stuff from Target and all our big box places every single day and have a garage filled with all these things from big box stores, which you're going to hear a little bit more about later. So there are slices of those misdemeanor categories where we are going to demonstrate that we're going to enforce the law in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, lastly, let me conclude with what I was supposed to do in the beginning. What's behind me? So, Real-Time Crime Center, here's what you did not have a year ago. We had some cameras a while ago. Now we have how many total?
Almost 9,000.
Almost 9,000 cameras that they can tap into, including every camera in our public schools. That didn't exist 6 months ago. Credit to the chief and his team for making this happen, and our technology department. Over here on this side, we have this is basic, but this is literally the calls that are holding. You can see what's going on in our city right now. And, just as a nod to some of the health issues in our households, look at this: suicide, family dispute. This, again, we know these are different policy issues that we've talked about in the Metro Crime Initiative, but you can see what the calls are right here. And then what also is brand new is this. This shows us where they're happening so that we can direct the right resources and the nearest cars to them. There's actually a layer on this that shows the cars, the units that are closest by. And so this entire setup is also brand new as of about 9 months ago or so. And so this is now what we use when we have those situations that the chief mentioned. We are on scene, but we're tracking cars through intersections. Our license plate readers are reading their license plate, running them across the state database. And then we're able to see what units are nearby way faster than dispatch can. And so we're able to coordinate and triangulate how to get them. And then on top of all of this, one of these dots is gunshots. So it's not lost on any of us, especially after we were talking about yesterday, that there are dozens of gunshots every day in Albuquerque. The difference, thanks to the MCI and the legislature and even our federal law enforcement partners, is now we know where they occur in large parts of the city, down to a 40-foot radius. That is the only reason why we have any leads on anything that happened yesterday, is because of ShotSpotter. And so we're going to continue to try and expand that program as well. And again, that is all part of successes from our Metro Crime Initiative, and also the result of the crime fighting that has come from those investments in how we're keeping our city safer. So with that, we'll take some questions. Thank you so much. I thought we could have none. Just kidding.
Can we just go over the details of the $5 million? So is it for warrant roundups, and can anyone get this overtime? How exactly is it going to work?
So the idea is we're going to create a state fund which every agency can draw on. And what you get when agencies actually work together, which you see here, is that we're going to coordinate how to do it. It may be combined units. It all depends on staffing. So it's like, well, state police has extra on Wednesday afternoons, and BCSO has this and that, and the DA's got his schedule. So we'll organize the sort of literal schedule on how to serve those warrants. But all of it's going to come from overtime so that it doesn't drain from this list, right? Right now, if we were serving these 5,000 warrants, no one would be responding to any of these calls. That's the issue we're in. So that's why we have to do this with overtime. Now, again, we said at the state level, they're going to look at what might be needed statewide. And so we think 5 million will cover literally just the overtime for the estimated man hours per warrant served. That's where the number comes from. But I will mention this. I think the fun legislative task, the policy-making task, is what other funds need to be made available to push those warrants through the system. So is it overtime for paralegals, the equivalent of? Or is it contracted lawyers? Is it contracted prisoner transport? Things of that nature is still going to all have to be fleshed out, and that's why that number also might go up. What we know, and this is very Metro Crime Initiative, we know what we need. We need $5 million. But we're going to help the rest of the state and the rest of the system figure out what they need.
So the $5 million is just for BCSO, APD, and just...
I'd throw the DA's office in there as well. Yeah. And the state police in Albuquerque. It would certainly include them. And but we're hoping the US Marshal is going to play their role, but we'll see.
How many man hours does it take to serve these warrants?
Chief, you want to? Probably the best one for that.
That's a very difficult question. And we're going to try to put averages, and we're kind of looking at maybe somewhere from 4 to 8 hours. But that's generally saying, because there's sometimes our officers go out, they knock on a door, and they find somebody with a felony warrant, and they take them to jail. There's times we sit on a house for 2, 3 days, 4 days, before we're able to see the individual emerge from the house and we're able to take them into custody. So we're gonna look, and I think one of the things we're gonna look at is somewhere, the numbers we've ran is somewhere, we're looking somewhere about 4 hours per warrant, and you would need a number of officers. So we're still fleshing out all those details, and that number could go up or down, but that's kind of where we're getting the $5 million number based off of the number of warrants that are out in the community right now.
Other ones?
Yeah, Mayor, obviously we've gotten to this point. Do we think a lack of bondsmen or bounty hunters has allowed us to get to this, 5,360 felony warrants?
That's probably a good one for either the DA or the chief on that. I'll kind of open up. DA's too new on that one. We'll give him a pass.
I may not be too new, but I don't want to answer.
I mean, we do know fundamentally there's a lack of resources at every step of the way. So we've already, last year, we focused on this parole issue, right? And the ankle monitoring and that kind of thing. But I know you're asking something more specific.
You know, there is an impact. There has been an impact, and we got to acknowledge that. And it's just not an impact in the city of Albuquerque. You go talk to the leadership of NYPD, and I've had the luxury of speaking to them in the past couple years, and they had that concern when that occurred within their city and the changes. So it has had an impact, and I think this is one of those times where we have all of the right intentions in creating legislation, but we also have to start getting really good. And I think this is something that the Albuquerque Police Department has gotten good is, I had to take a step back and I had to admit 18, 19 months ago that we had to get better at doing criminal investigations. And I think that our state as a whole, legislators, leaders, we need to sometimes take a step back and say, we had the greatest of intentions, but where do we find a middle ground in being able to have a process that works? And we should never be expected to develop a process one time and that process work correctly. So maybe there is room for us to make modifications to ensure that there is accountability for individuals who are committing crime and are released into the community.
Okay, questions? I have one too. Now, Mayor, I know you mentioned that we're still waiting for those funds for the legislature. If and when those funds are secured, what will be those next steps after the funding is secured to start this project? Like maybe more warrant roundups in the future or anything like that we can think of right now?
Well, for us, we want to be clear, this is really about felony warrants.
Yeah.
And I know historically that term has been used in non-felony cases, and that's not what we're talking about, other than like that real time or that retail crime situation. So basically the process will work like this. We're going to try and do what we can with existing resources. And so we've ramped up on that. And we have, now that we have some additional partners, we're going to do more of this no matter what. But the question is getting down the backlog, right? The backlog's going up. So we need more resources. And so what we'll do is we're going to be doing this on our own. And then as soon as that funding is available, say roughly in, the session would end in March. There's a 30-day signing period. That's April. Usually everything comes out unless it has an emergency clause, July 1. And so, but we'll use that time between the end of the session and July 1 to set up and organize the resource allocation and the staffing model and sort of the calendar for how we'll do it. And also, from time to time, we even do short-term loans against funding that we know is coming. So the important thing is it passes the legislature, and we're talking about months, not years, just a few months to get this up and running.
Do you have like a concrete goal of like, you want to get X amount cleared by X date? And if so, what is that?
A sustainable backlog. Some of this does remind me a little bit of the rape kit backlog that we dealt with in the following. We know this is too big. We know we have to bring it down. But as was mentioned, these are individual cases. And so it's a disservice to sort of pick a number or a threshold. We just want this to go down drastically, and then we'll understand what's an appropriate number. And this was the same with the rape kit backlog. There were, tens of thousands of backlog. There's always a backlog for a couple of months till it's processed, right? So we understand there has to be some backlog, but it should never be 5,000 for our city. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we need to remember, Lisa, is I think this is where the importance of partnerships comes in. It's not going to be just APD deciding or BCSO deciding. Myself and our new DA have already spoken, and we need to have a priority system. We need to recognize and see who are our drivers of crime, and we've talked about that. And we also want to make sure that we just don't serve these warrants, that the DA's office is prepared and we have cases ready to make sure that these individuals stay in custody, and we put our best foot forward in preventative detention hearings. So that number, we don't have an exact number, but I think as we go along, we'll decide which ones are priorities, which ones are going to have the greatest impact on crime. Because if you go out and you ask every auto theft detective, you ask a lot of our detectives, they can tell you who the drivers of crime are. This is about us working together, getting those individuals into custody, and having a good game plan on the back end to make sure that we do everything we can to keep them into custody. And this is where the new program that we've been working with Commander Hartsock is going to come into play. Is like, how are we going to make sure we're putting all of our resources towards good, strong discovery coming forward right off the back, so the DA's office has that information at their hands when they go to a detention hearing.
Any other questions? I have just one more. I'm not sure maybe who best want to answer this, but how did you guys kind of settle on wanting to focus this year on those felony warrants? I know you guys have had a lot of communication between each other. If you guys want to talk a little bit about how and why you guys decided to focus on that this year?
Yeah, a couple of reasons. One of the things that the methodology behind MCI has brought to light is the intersection of impact and what's possible. And often, when you convene people and you gather, there's wonderful ideas and brainstorming, but, all of it is really difficult to pull off. This is not. And so this stuck out right away. We had all sorts of ideas, and a lot of them are in our MCI package, and they're important ideas for preventing the warrant backlog in the first place. So that is where we have to go as a community and as a society. But I also know that people want safer streets now, right? They want to feel safer now, not 5 years from now when all these programs take into effect. And when we said, what is the single thing that we could do? There was almost no other answer either. This is the one thing we can execute on, we can deliver on, that will make us safer. And we're open to other ideas as well, but it stuck out right away. And we actually had a grid that looked like that, and it's like what's impact and what's actually doable. And this was the only one on the far right-hand side.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much.